This is a video in response to email sent by a student asking how to do the 5 numbers problem. And I've had a few people turn it in, and been a lot of different ways of doing it. And really it's a pretty straightforward problem. It's just complicated in that it has to check some numbers. And so I use some while loops. And the while loops we use are very similar to the data verification that we did in an earlier problem, where basically every time you put in a number, the user puts in a number, you have to verify that that number is within the range and that number isn't a duplicate. And then it just works its way through the program. So when you get to the bottom, you have numbers within the range and no duplicates. And then you simply use a for loop at the end to go numerically in order and print out any of them that happen to equal a number. And so that's the solution. You can see I replied to that email and sent everybody a copy of it, and basically it had an algorithm in it. And let's look at the algorithm real quick. Hopefully you can read this on your screen. But the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to declare 5 integer variables, initialize all of them to 0, so that way they are all equal, and that causes a problem, so we'll need to adjust that. All right, then the second thing is we're going to ask the user to enter the first number. Okay, that will change the first number. And as long as that number is between 1 and 10, it will be a valid number. So then I can go on and I can create a while loop for all the remaining numbers, just verifying to make sure that that number doesn't match any of the previous numbers that have been chosen. All right, and then once all of those done, I'm going to write a for loop, and that for loop is going to go from 1 to 10. And then if any of the numbers equal the iterator, so it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. All right, if one of the numbers equals a 1, it's going to print a 1. If one of the numbers equals a 2, it's going to print a 2. It'll go all the way through all the choices 1 to 10, and eventually it will print all 5 numbers out in numerical order. All right, so let's take a look. I've got the program written, and this should give you a really big hint on how to get started and how to complete the rest of the program. But keep this algorithm in mind. So if you don't have that email, just freeze the screen and maybe take a note or two. But I'm going to move this out of the way. And here is my version of 5 numbers. All right, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit so we can see it. All right, and so here in 5 numbers, I've declared the scanner with the system.in. All right, I have my integers, my num1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I didn't bother setting them as 0 because actually it really doesn't matter at this point that they are all 0. Okay, you can see that inside a loop, I'm going to have an again one, just like I did with the guessing game. I'm going to have an again one where I reinitialize them all to 0. All right, but I go into the loop and I say if again equals yes. Well, it does equal yes at this point. All right, and so now I can initialize all my values to 0. Okay, then I'm going to enter 5. It asks me to enter 5 different numbers between 1 and whatever. And so that's just a print line. And then I put in enter the first number, and the person enters that first number. Here's the data verification loop. While the number is less than 1 or greater than 10, that's an invalid number. So they drop into this loop, and it says, now, hey, dummy, you got to do it right. Okay, make a number between 1 and 10. Keep doing it until they finally get it right. And eventually, they will enter a number between 1 and 10. Now it will go on to pick the second number. Now, picking the second number is identical to picking the first number, except I have to check to make sure that it is not equal or not the same as, okay, a previously chosen number. Okay, if it is the same as number 1 or a previously chosen number, or it is less than 1, in other words, not a valid number, then it goes in and says, hey, that's a duplicate number, or between, not between. Try again. Okay, now you can see that this is going to repeat over and over, and the only thing that will change is when you get to number 3, you have to check to see if it's equal to number 2 or if it is equal to number 1. Okay, so this or statement is going to get longer and longer, obviously, as it goes around. All right, so that should really get you started. At the very end, remember that what you're going to do is you're going to write a for loop that's going to go from 1 to 10, and if any of the numbers, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, any of those numbers are the same as the I. Remember, you go for int I equals 1, and I is less than 10. If it is less than I, or the same as I, then you're going to print out I. All right, and that way it'll print 1 or it'll print 5. Okay, you can probably figure that part out at the end. So give it a shot. Here's I'm going to run my program here. If I can click the button and give you an idea what it looks like. I got to move my thing out of the way here. There we go. Okay, there, enter the first number, and so I'll enter the first number and I'll say 15. Well, hey, 15 is not between 1 and 10. Try again. So I'll put 5. Okay, enter the second number and I'll check and I'll put in 3. All right, enter the third number, I'll put 5. Well, 5's a duplicate, so you got to do it again. So I'll put 8, and then I'll put 7, and then I might put 1. Okay, so there's my 5th number. Now the for loop's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and if any of the numbers equal that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it will print them out in numerical order. Now I say, do you want to try again? In this case, I'm going to say no, and it will say goodbye. But if I said yes, it would reset all my values to 0. Okay, that's where you see I had to reset my values to 0. Okay, and then it will let me go through and do it again. Okay, give it a try, and you should be able to get the 5 numbers problem done.